Welcome to the Centuries of Sound Radio Podcast, the mid-monthly show where we discuss and give some context to these records.
My lord and gentlemen,
Centuries of Sound.
If you enjoy these programs, please consider supporting the show on Patreon. For $5 or local equivalent per month, you can get full downloads of mixes and these radio podcasts a year earlier. Centuries of Sound is an independent podcast without any advertising, and it's only with the support of patrons that the show can survive. Find out more at patreon.com/centuriesofsound.
Centuries of Sound on Cambridge 105 Radio.
Hello, welcome to Centuries of Sound. I'm James.
And I'm Sean.
This is the show where we delve into the past to bring you a year of recorded sound using only original wax cylinder recordings. At least it is for this year, or 2 years in fact, because we're still in the early days of recorded sound and there's not really enough in 1 year to justify doing a whole show on it. Which years are we doing this time?
The year's 1896 to 1897.
So what kind of year was 1896, would you say?
Well, for America, of course, they elect President McKinley, often forgotten now as the footnote in the career of the far more popular President Roosevelt, but he was a transformative president realigning American politics. More on that later. It also saw one of the first speeding fines in the United Kingdom, performance of Oscar Wilde's Salome, and the founding of the forerunner of Olympic Lyonnais FC.
Well, in a tiny, bare-walled room, a man sings into a huge metal horn. The sound causes vibrations in the air which travel down the horn, compressing into a smaller point, causing a diaphragm to vibrate. The diaphragm pushes a metal stylus which cuts a minuscule groove in a brown wax cylinder turned by a clockwork mechanism. No electricity is involved. The force cutting the groove is the sound wave itself. As the cylinder turns, the wax shavings have to constantly be blown away to avoid the device skipping. The cylinder's made of brown wax, we say. It's actually a metallic soap. With time it becomes extremely brittle and it can split or shatter if not handled with care. Even stored carefully, oxides or oils tend to migrate to the surface, and this attracts a black mould which eats away at the wax, after which playback is impossible. So, to play the sound back, we reverse this operation. A lighter stylus moves through the groove, vibrating a diaphragm which resonates out the horn. It's a matter of cutting-edge precision engineering to get any sound out at all. So the reproduction of voices and instruments you'll hear today is still something of a miracle. And then, 120 years later, with all the wear and tear that means, we stick a needle into these artifacts, which seems downright insane. But still, those sounds are sitting there, and it's this race against time to get them out. Let's play one of the biggest hits of the decade. This is George W. Johnson, who we've encountered before. Do you remember about George W. Johnson?
If you could remind me.
He's the biggest recording artist of the decade. He is a street entertainer, a black street entertainer that was found on the streets of New York performing his 2 songs. This song does not have an offensive name, although some of the language within has some offensive racial stereotypes, I would say. The other song was whistling based, and this one is laughing based. So of the tens of thousands of recordings he made of this piece in the 1890s, this unfortunately seems to be the best preserved one we have. Johnson's street corner entertainments already seem outdated, but his laugh is still hearty and infectious even after so many performances. You've got to imagine this guy, he's been sitting in a recording studio recording this over and over again, because every cylinder was a master copy at this time, recording again and again and again all day, but he still sounds like he really means it when he laughs.
as I was coming around the corner, I heard some people say, "It understands up here, it comes this way. With a heater like a snowplow, his mouth is like a trap, and when he moves it gently, you'll see so happy that I laugh." Very good study from Larry. Very good study from Larry. They said his mother was a princess, his father was a prince, and he'd been the apple of their eye. and nothing is win. But he'll be the king of our burns, we by and by. And when I heard the say by and laugh until I cried, said I love. I got that here from Larry. I got that here from Larry. Now going for a different son, so what I'm going to say, I'll try my best to please you in my simple little way. Now whether you say it's funny or a quiet bit of jab, why, all I'm going to do is just go in there to the laugh and I know. I got that here from Larry.
So, did that sound familiar at all?
It has echoes of the Laughing Policeman, I think.
It is indeed the same song. When I was a kid, I heard Laughing Policeman on the radio once or twice, I think. I never realised it was the first big hit of recorded sound and not involving a policeman at all. And it was American song in the first place. Yeah, so there we go.
How do we know this was the best-selling song? Because presumably there are no charts, obviously, at this point.
Catalogues and numbers of recordings. I think when every copy you're making is an original, then you can be more sure of those kind of things. The demand for it is huge. I have copies of records made of it in Russia 10 years later, if you can imagine such a thing.
How do you copy a cylinder?
It was around this time, was it a little later than this, that they developed a way of making copies of cylinders. It was quite a difficult technique, but they managed to make duplicates. At first, they would sound much worse. It was second or third hand duplicates.
So basically, we have cheap knockoff cylinders of this song.
Yeah, but a few years later, you do
Bootlegs.
Yeah, but I think he made a good career of it, and he did sound genuinely jolly.
Yes, he did,
didn't he? Good old George W. Johnson. So let's hear, as promised, a bit more about William McKinley, an American president that I only really know that he was assassinated. That's the big takeaway thing about him. But I think he was more important than that.
Well, the 1896 presidential election is often seen as a realignment election. McKinley represents an idea of a strong central federal government which would protect American industry with tariffs and the dollar linked to the gold, what was called the gold standard, which the United Kingdom is also using around about this time. And this realignment of voters, which brings together urban voters as a serious bloc for the first time, but some of the Mideast American states as well, realigns American politics up until the election of Franklin Roosevelt in the 1930s, and is what is considered the start of the progressive era. He is an important figure, and some historians say that only he could have won this election against popular Democrat William Bryant, who I don't know if we're hearing from later or not.
Not this year.
Not this year.
Not this year, unfortunately.
But we will be hearing from at some point. Who was a very popular candidate with farmers, and this is the first time really that farmers have been defeated as a force in American politics.
The party political system in America is not as it is now.
No, absolutely not. The Republican Party in many ways is the more progressive party at this time. We've got to remember the Republicans are the party of the North, they're the party of business, and actually they're the party that freed the slaves, and they're the party who wants to progress, quote-unquote, society forwards. The Democrats at this time are the party of the South, the party of farmers, the party of people who lost the Civil War, and at this point have managed to segregate and disenfranchise almost every African American in the South.
Okay, so let's hear William McKinley's voice. This is what he sounded like. From this point onwards, we have the voices of American presidents.
My fellow citizens, recent events have imposed upon the patriotic people of this country a responsibility and a duty greater than that of any since the Civil War. It was a struggle to preserve the government of the United States. Now it is a struggle to preserve the financial honor of the government. It was a contest to save the Union. Now it is a contest to save spotless its credit. Then section was arrayed against section. Now men of all sections can unite and will unite to rebuke the repudiation of our obligations and the debasement of our current. In this contest, patriotism is above party and national honor is dearer than any party name.
President William McKinley there talking to the Republican conference on his monetary policy. Kind of in line with what you were saying there.
So McKinley is the Republican Party's expert on tariffs, or the idea that the government should artificially raise the prices of foreign goods, A, to stimulate the domestic economy by making American products artificially cheaper, but also the idea that you can fund a lot of American government from taxing goods. This becomes quite popular in England around this time with Joseph Chamberlain and the tariff, the imperial tariff system. And so this idea, effectively, it is quite an inward-looking system, but the idea is that if you protect American jobs, more American money stays in America, the whole economy benefits, everyone is raised up.
Well, it's very relevant right now, isn't it?
Yes,
Similar things being tried.
Yes, well, Trump is very much in favour of tariffs at this point, and I suspect we're heading that way under the Conservative Party, I think, post-Brexit, but we'll see.
Where there are very serious topics, of course, there's going to be comedy as well.
Absolutely.
This is a man called George Graham. He's not one of the other famous George Grahams. And I think this sounds like a direct parody of the president's speech.
Money is the cause of all the misery in this world, and yet every man you meet is ready and willing to borrow trouble. Now the financial situation of this country at the present time is something frightful. We don't know whether we'll have the gold standard or the silver standard. We don't know whether a dollar will be worth 80 cents, 70 cents, or 60 cents. The way I get rid of that difficulty is that every dollar I get hold of I spend. I take no chances. The government can bust tomorrow and it don't owe me a cent. Now the Democratic Party says that the Republican Party are all thieves, and the Republican Party says the Democratic Party are all thieves. Well, they know each other, so there's no chance for an argument there. Now, if you want to end this contention and strife, make me president of this United States, and I'll do it cheaper than the man that's in there.
To elucidate further, what he's talking about, the gold standard versus the silver standard, is the idea that you hitch the dollar or any kind of money to a certain set value of gold. So the idea is you could exchange, say for argument's sake, $1 for 1 ounce of gold, for example. The Republican Party argue for gold, the gold standard, lashing the dollar to the gold, which makes the dollar more expensive, whereas the Democrat Party want to have what's called a silver standard, which makes the dollar cheaper, so there's more dollars, dollars cheaper, farmers can buy more, etc., etc., etc.
In the age of the rolling back of slavery and America growing as an imperial power in the world, build up to the First World War, it does seem like a silly thing to have huge arguments about when I guess we could also draw a parallel to modern days. Perhaps we get too concerned about things which in the future we will wonder why that was the big issue. What else is going on in 1896? So how about in the world of literature? What kind of things do we have going on there?
Oh, well, we have Shropshire Lad by Alfred Edward Housman.
A.E. Housman.
Housman, thank you very much.
Who doesn't come from Shropshire.
No.
That's my fact about A.E. Housman.
Incredibly popular, arguably more popular in the early 20th century, really, but it was very popular among young readers. And indeed was one of the first sets of poems to be set to music, so I'm reliably informed. Okay. We have The Island of Dr. Moreau. Okay.
Another one of H.G. Wells.
Yes, H.G. Wells. It's kind of Lord of the Flies-esque in a certain sense. It follows the narration of Edward Pendrick, a shipwrecked man rescued by a passing boat who was left in the Highland home of Dr. Moreau, a mad scientist who creates human-like hybrids from animals via vivisection.
It's pretty gruesome. I mean, of his science fiction classics, it maybe is the most gruesome, some of the animals there. Do you have any other books?
We have The Seagull, which is a play written in
Right.
1895,
Okay.
but first produced in 1896 by Russian dramatist Anton Chekhov. It dramatises the romantic and artistic conflicts between four characters.
Chekhov does write a good play, or he did for those 5 or
Yeah.
6 years when he was at the top of his game before he died. So it's kind of a golden age for literature in some ways. Lots of famous works being produced.
Yeah.
As far as music goes, well, we could talk about the world of classical music, but I think as far as recorded music goes, we're talking about pop music, really. And ragtime is hopefully starting to come in, but not really. There's a precursor to ragtime, which is we can call cakewalk. And the idea of cakewalk is that slaves or plantation workers, they'd probably be at this point, they parade up and down in suits making fun of their white people, whatever role they have at this point. And they do funny dances, I think John Cleese kind of thing. And the one who does the funniest dance, mocking kind of walk, gets a cake. They win a cake at the end. That's the idea of the cakewalk. And it's supposed to go with early ragtime music. To what extent is not really that clear. These words ragtime, cakewalk, and a few other terms are they're all kind of jumbled up and mixed in, and it's kind of hard to define. This is the Columbia Orchestra, who were very much not a ragtime organisation. This is them doing something called the Virginia Skedaddle. I feel like it's basically a minstrel show piece rather than anything else. It's mediated through this kind of white viewpoint, but you can see maybe there's something underneath it. I wish they didn't need to add the minstrel style imitations of black speech to it. And
Oh dear.
I mean, naming it the Virginia Skedaddle, the Virginia minstrels are the most famous minstrel troupe, so they are also white. So it's a bit annoying, but this is what we have as far as cakewalk goes in this year. Quite a problematic recording, you were saying there.
Yes, just some language and some caricatures which I think are still quite distasteful to a modern audience, if I put it lightly.
It is massively offensive and terrible. I mean, what you should remember with every recording at this time, really, is the society of the time was racist beyond anything we can picture. It's so ingrained into every aspect of society that it's very hard to avoid. And you have new music coming in and it's associated with black people. This is unfortunately what happens, and I really wish we could get away from it. This is one of the reasons why people don't listen to music from this era, is that they can't escape the terrible racism of it. And I think we can look at it as historians and say this is an attempt, a bad attempt to do it. But at the same time, you can hear the musicianship there. They were really trying to introduce these new elements into their music, and you know, it's unfortunate that they didn't just go and record the real musicians who were doing this, but you know, everything was recorded by this small group of musicians in New York.
So was this an entirely white band?
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. We do have some recordings of black performers, and you know, like I said, George W. Johnson was the biggest recording artist of the decade, and was a black man. Let's have some comedy, shall we?
Oh, please.
Hilarious comedy. This is from a Mr. Cal Stewart. We'll be hearing more from Cal Stewart through the years. He's, I think, made more cylinders and early discs than anyone else. Massively prolific pre-World War I recording artist. And he was a friend of Mark Twain, and Mark Twain would come and introduce him. He was... he was from the south of the USA, Virginia, but he pretended to be from New England, from a community called Pumpkin Center. He had already been taking these monologues around the country for around a decade, and Edison Records got him to record some of them, and that was him in a career for the next 20 years. We're going to hear many more from him, for better or for worse. This is his trip to Coney Island.
Uncle Joe Weathersby's trip to Coney Island, made by Mr. Cal Stewart, Edison Record. That's the other day I got on one of these cars what goes across the Brooklyn Bridge, and I started out for Coney Island. Well, sitting alongside of me in the car was an old lady, and she seemed to be a little bit fidgety about something or other, and finally she turned around to me and she said, "Mister, do these cars stop when we get on the other side of the bridge?" I said, "Well, no, they don't. You'll get the awfulest bump you ever got in your life." Well, we got on the other side, and I got on one of them trolley cars what goes down to Coney Island. I handed the car feller $1, and he took and put it in his pocket just the same as if it belonged to him, and I guess it did. We got putting it down there, and I said, "Mister, don't I get any change?" He said, "Did you see that sign on the end of the car?" I said, "No, sir." Well, he said, "You better go out and look at it." Well, I went out and looked at it, and that settled it. It said, "This car goes to Coney Island without change." I guess it did. I'll be doggone if I got any. Well, we got down there, and I must say, of all the pandemonium and hubbub I ever heard in my life, Coney Island beats it all. I found one place what they call the Midway Pleasumps, and then I found another place what they call the Streets of Cairo. Well, they had a lot of shows that going on along there, and I went into one of them and sat down, and I guess if they hadn't shut up the store, I'd have been sitting there yet. I put in there, busted my buttons laughing. They had a lot of girls dancing some kind of a dance. I don't know what they called it, but the music went something like this. La 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 la. I went home, more I thought about it, I made up my mind I'd learn that dance. Well, I went out in the cornfield where none of the neighbors could see me, and I'll be doggone if I didn't knock down about 4 acres of corn, but I never got that dance right.
So some laughs there from Cal Stewart. Did you find that as hilarious as I did? Which is not so hilarious.
Maybe his humour is a taste to be acquired, but I did enjoy the song at the end. I think we've heard that on this show.
Yeah, the famous exotic song of the time, which it's not really an exotic song, as we discussed previously.
Excellent.
Yeah. So we haven't really covered high art. Let's hear something a bit more dignified, perhaps. A couple of pieces. This is a performance from one of America's greatest cornet players. The cornet was the foremost brass instrument of its day, and it would be right up until the jazz era. And he's called William Paris Chambers, and it's called The Seraph. try some better music now, I would say.
Yes.
Yeah, and let's have some more music that sounds acceptable. At the same time of this burgeoning recording industry with a small group of musicians in America, we have another small group who happen to be very good musicians recording in Russia. This is Joseph Hoffman, and it's from a Julius Block cylinder. Julius Block, as mentioned on previous episodes, was a hobbyist in Russia who was friends with all the great composers and musicians in Russian classical music at that time. So here he is. It's a piano piece from Mr. Joseph Hoffman.
Centuries of Sound on Cambridge 105 Radio.
So that's us done for 1896. Let's move on to 1897. What kind of things are going on in the world?
Well, 1897 sees the inauguration of William McKinley in March. You can remember until, I can't remember, some point in the mid-20th century, American presidents inaugurated in March. So that if you're a president and you lose the election in November, you've then got 4 months of you're in power, but not in office, but not in power, effectively. Queen Victoria celebrates her golden diamonds. There we are. Diamond Jubilee. She becomes the last British monarch to do so until Queen Elizabeth. France allows women to study at the École des Beaux-Arts.
Good.
Freedom of religion proclaimed in Madagascar, which is perhaps my favourite fact of this year. Just because I've got images of the film.
Right, of some lemurs.
Yeah, declaring freedom of religion.
About.
And the first Zionist Congress convenes in Basel, Switzerland.
Okay.
And the first Internationale convenes in England, I believe.
Oh, so
a good year for everyone involved, really.
Political movements, which are going to be very important in the 20th century, kind of kicking off in this year. So, we are hurtling towards the 20th century.
Absolutely.
As far as recorded music goes, there's not a huge amount of progress. We are starting to see discs. That is a bit of a different thing. The first disc recordings are kind of from this year that are commercially available. Elsewhere, though, the pattern's all too familiar. Experiments are conducted into a new medium, engineers work on it to make a viable product, entrepreneurs invest and roll up mass production, the great and the good attempt to claim it for high culture, then the rabble inevitably take over.
Aww.
This doesn't mean that someone's gone down to New Orleans to record Buddy Bolden, unfortunately. It more means that the ability to record your own cylinders means that we're getting people making the audio equivalent of B-movies or stag films, we could even say. there's a CD called Actionable Offences, Indecent Phonograph Recordings from the 1890s, which Archaeophone Records put out about a decade ago. And most of these are unofficial recordings without labels, so the dates are kind of guessworks at best. You know, it's a kind of messy compromise to assume they're from 1897, but here we are anyway. And quite a lot of them are performed by a Mr. Russell Hunting, a very popular recording artist of the time, who did Casey. Casey was one of his characters. It's an Irishman. That's the kind of humour that they appreciated in the late 1890s, ethnic humour.
Brilliant.
But yeah, it's a very popular recording artist, and he founded Phonoscope. It's the first independent magazine for the recording industry, and he set up one of the first phonograph shops in New York. And you could come into his phonograph shop, and if you asked him nicely, he would reproduce bawdy monologues or dialogues from a book called The Stag Party, which was also illegal. And the local police sent in an undercover officer to request him to record something along these lines, and he did, and he was arrested, and he went to jail for 6 months.
For his art?
For not his art. You can judge for yourself whether this is a work of art or not. I'm not sure it's suitable to be described as such, but here we go anyway.
And I put me hand on her, and after working about an hour, I get me trousers down, and I get me big boogie boo out, and I get about to have a little game of things Winnie West with the little girl. When I see me wife coming down the walk to the shed, she just come back from the meeting to get her needle or some thread or something. There I were with me pants down. The girl, she simply dropped the thread and she run away out of the place. And me with me pants down and me dahlias darling there. My wife comes in and says, Jenny, what are you doing here? I says, darling, I'm shitting. Shitting, says she. I am, darling, today. Show it to me, says she. Show it to me. Make me, your honor and gentlemen of the court, I give them $50 for a bit of what turns a half an inch long. That shows you the price for no varies according to the circumstances under which it is poop.
That was quite something.
1890s, quite a bit more
wild.
Wilder than you imagine. It's the naughty 90s. People do call it the naughty 90s, so substantially naughtier than you might have been led to believe. I could say
it's kind of the equivalent of filming your mate doing something stupid on your phone, isn't it? Really, it's that kind of
it's not a great work of literature. Let's talk about what is a great work of literature at this time. What kind of literature do we have for this year?
So we have quite a rich set of literature this year. Perhaps most famously, Dracula is published this year by Irish author Bram Stoker. I'm sure you're all aware of who Dracula is. But it tells the story of Dracula's attempt to move from Transylvania to England so that he may find new blood and spread his unholy curse, and this battle between Dracula and a small group of people led by Professor Abraham von Helsing.
It's a good book. I do like it. I read it when I was, 15, 16 for the first time.
Yeah.
And my impression of it when I first read it was that the beginning part was amazing. One of the best bits of writing I'd ever read. And then the, let's say, the second half, not so good. Once they're out of Dracula's castle into London, the characters are not there. As one of the characters is Quincy, whose personality is like this. He's an American. That's about it. There's who else is there? Lucy, who is the most pathetic. I don't know what his opinion of women was, but the evil vampire women at the start are much more interesting than the supposedly nice women that come along later, who are completely useless. All the men are wildly in love with them for no reason I can tell at all. And a lot of the book consists of these men writing letters about how wonderful the other men in the party are and how much they respect them. That is a good quarter of the book.
I mean,
that.
I'm all for intermale bonding.
It's I don't know, dull. That's all that part. But I still really like it. I just think it needs editing. That's all. Have you read Dracula before?
I read a bit of it. I was about the same age, and I got a bit bored. I think
I'd get bored after he goes back to England. That's fair enough. It does get a bit tedious there. It's good again at the end. It does get back in the groove again at the end. But I do really like it. But I think it should be cut down. I like to read a cut version.
Christopher Lee in the film version, I think, is unparalleled. I don't know if you've seen.
There've been many good film versions of Dracula. I don't know that the one in the early 1930s with Bela Lugosi's the most famous one. I always think of it as it's almost a silent film. It's shot like a silent film, which again it's good at the beginning, but as soon as they get out into London, it stops working. I mean, the best one probably is Nosferatu, which was an unofficial version.
The Christopher Lee one takes some beating, although there was a perverse joy in the recent one. What was that called? Vlad?
There's a one about the historical character about Dracula.
Who is infected by some demon played by Charles Dance.
Right, okay. I have not seen that. Is that worth watching?
It depends what you want out of a film, I think. If you want pure action and some light-hearted enjoyment that you can switch off to, go all for it. If you want a deep reflection on the nature of man's inner workings.
Right. My favourite version, perhaps, Love at First Bite. Have you seen Love at First Bite?
No, that sounds excellent.
Oh, God, Love at First Bite. So, apart from Dracula, what else do we have in terms of writings in that year?
We have, famous in America, Yes, Virginia, There Is a Santa Claus.
Okay, great. It's the most reprinted newspaper column of all time, I believe.
It's full of banal truths, I think, attempting to be a deep philosophical reflection upon how Santa Claus is effectively the good in all of us and how we should all love and respect each other a bit more. The wishy-washy stuff.
Okay, it is massively popular. It's been reprinted more times than anything else. Any other events in the year that are interesting?
So we have Oscar Wilde is released from prison this year. He goes into exile.
Okay.
We were talking about great literature just a little bit earlier with that fantastic ditty.
He's written De Profundis and he's written the Ballad of Reading Gaol while he's been in there. So we do have things starting to move along in terms of music as well. We've got trombone player Arthur Pryor, who's going to feature in the next few episodes. By 1895, he'd been promoted as the assistant conductor of Sousa's band.
Oh.
As Sousa would have nothing to do with recording studios, that was his domain. And they went on a tour of Europe, and Pryor had put himself forward as a soloist, producing not only elaborate displays of lightning-fast trombone playing, but also incorporating the kinds of slides and smears that would later be a hallmark of early jazz. So he's starting to learn this ragtime music's kind of starting to come through. And that went against everything expected as the regimented military music you might expect from Sousa's band. And this combination of a peacock-like display of talent and occasional plunges into joyous self-expression was called a Yankee trick by astonished European audiences. The link to the underexposed world of black music is unclear, but the connection is surely no coincidence. Let's hear Sousa's band with this is labelled as Sousa's band, but it's a very prominent trombone piece from Arthur Pryor, and it's really his piece. It's called Bluebells of Scotland. You think it would be some kind of bagpipe piece, but it's not. So this kind of sounds like a leap forward to me. It's although we've already heard him quite a few times, Arthur Pryor, but he's been just one of the other people playing there. But suddenly we've got him like doing this peacocking solo stuff, and I think it's it's a breath of fresh air compared to all the kind of staid military kind of music that they've been making before. It's hard to believe that's Sousa's band, in fact.
Yeah, I mean, is Sousa still part of Sousa's band at this point?
He is, but like I say, he refused to join in with recordings. So as far as the recorded versions go, he wasn't. Another great soloist who appeared at this time is Vesel Osman. You know, trailblazing artists, they're usually a bit better remembered than he is. He was the first musician to make a ragtime record. He was the king of the banjo. He's one of the biggest names of the Edwardian era. Vess was born in Hudson, New York in 1868. He spent the entirety of his adult life as a professional musician, recording for 25 years and touring America and further afield for more than 30. And he recorded right up until 1917 and continued to tour with his son Vesel Osman Jr. until he died from an onstage heart attack in 1923 at the age of just 55. But that was a normal kind of lifespan at that time. Let's hear Vesel Osman showing off his banjo skills. This is a famous song, Old Folks at Home, also known as Swanee River. So again, some virtuoso musicianship there from Wessel Osman playing Old Folks at Home, also known as Swanee River. I think with these kind of guys, you can see where the future lies, and within a couple of years, we'll be mainly hearing stuff that sounds like it's of this kind of new era instead of Victorian music, you know. And let's just have a little bit more from Wessel Osman. This is him playing back up to Len Spencer. Len Spencer's big recording artist this time, and this is it's the big hit of the year, and it's an even bigger hit the following year, 1898, where it's kind of the theme tune for Roosevelt's Rough Riders in the Spanish-American War. But the recordings of it are from the year before. So it's called Hot Time in the Old Town, and it's a very famous song in its time. I'm not sure if it survived right up until now, but it's one of the famous pre-World War I tunes that everyone would be able to perform.
Get to ready where your friends and your gals. It's going to be a meeting that was good old town. Where you know that everybody and they all know the tune. And you got a rabbit foot above it, keep away the hood. And when you were here, when the preaching does begin, bend down low to the drive of the ocean. And when you get to releasing, you know they shouldn't sing. There'll be a hot side in your town tonight. My baby, when you were here, then my bells go ding-a-ling-a-ling. Oh, joy loud and sweetly you will sing. I was the first time through in the chorus all driving. There'll be a hot time in the old town tonight. There'll be gals for everybody in that good old town. And Mr. Noah Davis and Mr. Noah Brown. Mr. and a piece, they keep a dress all in red. I just hugged her and a kissed and I told me then she said, please, oh do not let me fall. You hold mine and I love you there some more. And you must be my man, or I'll have no man to come down. Be a hot time in the old town tonight. My baby, when you were here, then the bells go ding-a-ling-a-ling. Oh, joy loud and sweetly you will sing. How well that bird and sing. In the chorus all died in there, be a hot time in the old town tonight.
So the big hit of the year there, Hot Time in the Old Town. Have you heard that before?
I have not
at all. It was one of those standards that was around for a long, long time. I think possibly because it doesn't have any racist language in it or in the title, which helps.
Yes,
makes it not unique but unusual in this era, unfortunately. I think one more thing of interest today, perhaps. This is a recording by Cousins and DeMoss. Cousins and DeMoss, it's kind of represents a bit of a mystery. Give us this glimpse into the world of black vaudeville in the late 1890s. Or kind of appear to. We're not really sure who they are. There's no first names on the label. There's no catalogue listing, and there's no advertisement. But it's almost certain that they were Sam Cousins and Ed DeMoss, because there's two experienced black entertainers who were active on the vaudeville minstrel stage at the turn of the century. But it's a mystery as far as their whole life story is concerned, and where this comes from. But it does give us a rare glimpse into the world of the music that black people were making at this time that wasn't getting recorded.
And I was a moving and living in a morning time. You had a lonely daughter who begged to man for more than a night. Hallelujah, that I Lord, brother, not hallelujah, in the morning. I never would have been no free. I didn't have to break it in the Lord of God. I was glad to get to me for more than a year. In the morning, praise the Lord, while the good is there. Hallelujah, hallelujah, praise the Lord. Now my out and try and step on the floor. If we might the man is told the Lord, I'm glad I did a little fun. I come along to and I drive to run the morning and I in the morning and why the glory praise the Lord for me. Hallelujah in the morning.
Centuries of Sound on Cambridge 105 Radio.
You've been listening to Centuries of Sound. I've been James.
And I've been Sean.
So, Sean, what have you made of the music of 1896 and 1897?
Well, I think we've had some stirrings of modernity, of the turn of the 20th century. We're moving towards ragtime.
Pre-modernity or something like
yes.
that.
But
yeah.
we found out the naughty 90s really were naughty.
We did. They were quite naughty indeed. Parts of them, at least. The naughty parts, in fact.
Yeah.
As well as being a radio show, Centuries of Sound is also a website. You can come and have a look at what we've got at centuriesofsound.com. Please do come along and have a look. We've got mixes of every year up until 1910 right now. And we also have 2016 and 2017. I make mixes for those years. That's how this all started out. We're on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook as well. So you can like us on there if you feel like it. Let's finish off today with one of the most famous songs from this year, Stars and Stripes Forever. What can you tell us about Stars and Stripes Forever, Sean?
So Stars and Stripes Forever, the national march of the United States as of 1987.
Right. Not for quite a while after this, then.
No, not for quite a while after this. John Philip Sousa wrote that he composed the song on Christmas Day, 1896, after hearing of the death of David Blakely, the manager of the Sousa Band. Historically in the United States, it's known as the Disaster March. So,
right.
Essentially what that means is if there is some form of emergency, that the band need to signal to staff at the venue to start clearing the audience off in a calm manner, they will play this song, so the audience are unaware that something is going on, but they can start shepherding them out. Okay. And they will not play this under any other circumstances.
So is that what's going on here? Are we
signaling people to evacuate?
I mean, if you would like to evacuate your home or car at this point, don't do that. That would be a mistake, probably.
Yes.
So here it is, Stars and Stripes Forever, performed by the original artist, Sousa's Band. If you enjoy these programs, please consider supporting the show on Patreon. For $5 or local equivalent per month, you can get full downloads of mixes and these radio podcasts a year earlier. Centuries of Sound is an independent podcast without any advertising, and it's only with the support of patrons that the show can survive. Find out more at patreon.com/centuriesofsound.